Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Independent City Council meeting. It's Tuesday, the 27th of October, 7:30 in the morning, and it's dark. We're into the dark season. You know, some people have the monsoon season. We're into the dark season. Let the record show the council are all here, happy and cheerful. And I guess that
You're assuming a lot.
well, what can I say? I don't any visitor comment. I don't see any visitor comment. We have a bunch of stuff to do, council members, and let me add that under item 6, we're going to add an executive session related to labor negotiations. So we'll do that. We have a bunch of stuff to cover today, so we're going to move very promptly forward unless anybody has a problem with that. Let's go to liaison reports from the library board. Councilor Lyon.
Okay, I'm going to go up front, and this would be a 45-minute presentation.
Oh,
Okay.
with pictures and circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back?
Lots of visual.
Oh, great.
And
We only exaggerate slightly, it's more like 45 seconds.
yeah, more of this. Okay, before I show our PowerPoint, we had a library board meeting yesterday, and a couple of things. We still need one more board member, so if you can think of somebody who can read. You know, that's about it, right? And live in Independence, so that would be nice. The chess club continues to be very popular, and the library is going to be, and they are going to be hosting a tournament in March. Our Cuencos and Espanol, which means story time in Spanish, continues to grow, and it's a weekly event, and attendance is small but growing. Also, I just wanted, which I'm pretty excited about, is that the Goodwill is sponsoring a community ESL class at the library. I think that's, and it's free, and it's weekly, Thursdays from 1 to 3. So, I think that's exciting. And then, next to last, Ida and the Friends of the Library is sponsoring our downtown trick-or-treat for all the downtown business people. And the children will start at the library and we'll decorate bags and then send them out onto the streets. And usually there's about 300 children that pass through the library that day. Now it's one day before Halloween, so still expect children at your door on Saturday. Okay, and that's a joint effort with the Friends of the Library and IDA, Downtown Association. And now Robin has, we have a little special request, pictures of our summer reading program. First of all, isn't that darling?
It's a summer reading in a nutshell.
Every hero has a story. And 449 children, 131 teens, 355 adults, and 109 babies.
With their parents acting on their behalf.
So 2,496 people attended 56 programs for the children this summer. 92 people attended 7 programs for teens, and 105 attended programs for adults. The rest of that you're going to have to read yourself. It's too small for me. But look at, wait, don't move it yet, because there's a picture of the, do we know what that device is called?
I did not.
She was supposed to look
Maybe
at
the one from the
It's
airport. The wind.
wind thing. It goes around and the cup catches Forrest, you know? You're out that direction. Anyways,
The kids all knew.
there's a thing, it's something o-meter. Okay, thank you, dear. And then finally, this is
That was
the Minions.
Yeah.
And everybody knows what Minions are, right? Yes, okay. Everybody. Oh, and we had to make sure that you saw that these little ones come up in all sizes, shapes, and interests. So there you are. That's what the library board has been doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Always fun. Let's hear what
We
the
love our
museum.
library.
Let's hear what the museum folks are doing. Councilor Lipscott?
Okay, the museum, they met on October 14th, and I wasn't able to make the meeting. But the staff expressed gratitude for everyone who helped filming over the summer vacations. The $3 admission is working well. About $100 were donated to the city last week, in September. And new dead bulbs have been installed downstairs. The exterior door as well as the door going upstairs and the two doors in the storage area are all the same key now and are able to be opened with no key from the inside. MindNet has donated a new computer monitor and new printer to the museum. Andrea will be attending a history and culture summit hosted by the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde at the end of October. Little by little things, items are getting assessed and put in proper storage. On January the 23rd of January, there's going to be a hop field worker or hop at 1:30 p.m. by Mr. Everly. And what we're going to do is we are going to invite some of the old families that are still living here in Independence that used to live in the camps around this area and see what it was like living in the camps. And we're going to put a story together. And there's no update project on the lift project because there hasn't been time to write grants. And then we had the booth at the Hop and Heritage Festival, which it went well. And we're just getting ready for next year.
Okay. Thank you. Great, appreciate that. Traffic safety, Councilor Davis.
Yes, we just met Wednesday, and we have a new student representative for the Traffic Safety Commission. That's Marcos Cedillo. He attended his first meeting on Wednesday. The other probably highlight from that is you're probably seeing some new signs around the crosswalks for the schools. And it's a group, it's like a traffic, I don't remember the exact name of it, it's a traffic safety group that's helping us look at the traffic safety around school areas. And so they help us get those signs and they're looking at other ways to make it a little safer for the kids going to school. And that's pretty much it for the traffic safety.
You want to roll right into your
Yes, and also last Wednesday, at almost the same time, I had another meeting at the Hop and Heritage Festival Commission. And it was our final meeting for the year. We're going to take a break until January. We did make some changes. A few people are leaving the commission. We're adding a few new people, and we're trying to get set up for next January. And we have elected new officers. Our chair is going to be me, pending commission approval, because I'm not officially a member of the commission yet, but I will take over the chair for that position. Jason Kistler is offered to be the vice chair, and Jenny Kistler has graciously offered to remain as the financial officer with help, because she in the summer she gets very, very busy, and so she'll need some help with that, but she's said she would remain in that position. And secretary, well, we have somebody kind of appointed, but they need to be appointed to the commission first, so we'll kind of wait on that announcement. Anyway, so we're kind of getting set up for next year, and I think we're in good shape right now to get rolling in January.
Great. So what I understand here is that, Tom, you're going to be, you'd like to leave the role as liaison and become the HOP chair. And then Nancy, you agreed to be the liaison.
I do.
So I think we have to officially appoint Tom.
If you need this, if we're going to pass this down, I have this.
I think we know you. So we have to officially appoint Tom to the HOP Commission, so he has the official thing, and then we're gonna get some other names at a later date. Is that okay?
Correct.
I move to remove Tom as a liaison to the Hop Festival Commission and instead appoint him as a commissioner.
Second.
I have a motion, second discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
And then, without objection, we're gonna appoint Nancy as the liaison to the HOP commissions at HOP Festival Commission. Any objection to that? So ordered. I like that. I watch C-SPAN. There you go. Okay, that's good. Mr. Klein, the city manager report, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of council. In the interest of time, we dropped Councilor Lodge's drone flight of the library facilities. She did a great job of piloting it, but we thought it'd be a little time consuming. So, just a few things. I recognize you have time crunch and have a short report this time around. One, I think I mentioned last time, but we are revisiting the food hub proposal that we had submitted several years ago with the Regional Solutions team, and we are have several meetings scheduled this week to start doing a little more serious planning on that. Money looks like it's becoming available shortly. Not quite sure what the final amount is, but we want to be prepared with whatever is coming our, whatever may be coming our direction to get moving on that. So what that facility looks like, we're still open at the design thinking on that. We'll be able to report back to you a little more next time around. So just to keep on that. I mentioned, I think last time as well, but just a reminder, you may get calls on this 480 Williams, the property that we acquired through donation. We will be doing a learn to burn on that one in November, as well as we've already done some raids on it with our police department, the fire department. We'll be doing an exercise there, a separate exercise there as well. So it's become quite a good training facility, if nothing else, for us at this point. Valley Concrete, we've had yet another group come through yesterday. I think we're really happy with the interest we're getting on that site. I think people have taken a look at the work that was done there, and everybody here can see it. But we had one person there that was there yesterday, hadn't been there since before the deconstruction of the site, and just said, "Wow," just had the kind of a wow look on his face as he was walking around and saying, "I had no idea this site was this big, such a great development option." These same people control the 55-acre site elsewhere and thought this one looked every bit as large, if not bigger.
I just want to remark about the pathway along the river that we did with all the concrete mansion. Mike took a walk along the river, and it's just incredibly wonderful.
Yeah, that pathway
They
really
did a beautiful
terrific.
job.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Yeah. Great creativity over here, great work from our contractors. I mean, they really kind of wanted to put a signature on this piece. So, anyway, I think we're really happy with how that turned out.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you. So the mass grading project, as you can see, is done, but for the punch list, they have one piece of equipment left there, just getting ready to remove that as well. And as you mentioned, the pathways there, it is open to the public. Obviously, we don't want vehicles on that site, so we put up some signage. There will be mounted cameras, at least one camera up there as well, trying to discourage any, bad behavior. And this is the time of year that it could be worse, the worst. So, City Hall depositions are still scheduled for this week. We will be filing our motion for summary judgment here very shortly as well. Just went through and tweaked it somewhat to get it right. So that's moving forward. Sustainable Cities, the student project. So Sean and I had the opportunity to hold court with 70 students roughly down at the University of Oregon last week. It was quite the presentation. One of the students was a little bit rowdy and asking questions. Marcus, somebody or another. He peppered us with questions. He seems to have some inside knowledge about things going on in the community. I don't know where he gets that.
Suspicious.
Anyway, it was fun. And I think we're going to have them here a week from Saturday, so please drop in. It's a day-long charrette. and they will come and use their creativity. If anything, it looks anything like what we heard, during this past week, I think there's a lot to be kind of excited about in terms of their visioning, a lot of good creative ideas. So that's coming up in a week from Saturday. Let's see, we are back revisiting an old issue, Green Acres Mobile Home Subdivision. If you're familiar with it, back about 10 years ago, the statute changed on mobile home parks. They were given sort of carte blanche to convert them into mobile home subdivisions. It was sort of a get out of jail free pass because they didn't have to bring in the infrastructure. They were able to sell the lots, frankly, with substandard utilities and infrastructure. And across the state, the mobile home park owners fled the state by and large, took the money with them, and left some pretty poor lots behind for the new owners, the new property owners, along with all the liability they received. So we have one here. I've had one in each city that I've worked in, at least one, and we're having to somehow come up and confront that issue here. So that's they've talked to us on and off, but they have, they're responsible for their streets, they're responsible for their water, their sewer, their storm. That's a pretty big expense on a mobile home's property owner. So it's a challenging conversation. We don't have good answers, but we're going to try and engage and do our best with that. I think you're all aware the judge has, after a lot of years, tendered her resignation. I mean, the mayor, we have a couple of candidates that we want to take a look at. There's a council appointment, so we'll come back to you with some ideas. She has graciously allowed us to serve through the end of the year before she leaves the bench. So she's going full-time over in Marion County, and then I think she'll be good towards retirement at some point. And then finally, there was a question last time about Paypros billing. That is available online on our website, fully available. So and the new financial system fully supports that. So, questions?
Additional questions?
I have a question about the sports park.
Yes, sir.
Where are we at?
I think I misinformed you last
Yeah,
time.
I think you did.
Yeah, well, I thought I've been told that we had seeded with the topsoil center. We hadn't.
Yeah.
And so I don't know the current state. It's been a really slow project. And the only thing you can add to this?
I don't really have an update, and they were working out there yesterday. I'm hoping that we'll have grass still before winter, otherwise it won't take. It'll be next year before.
Yeah, and I was actually out there yesterday too, and it looked really nice. I mean, they're really polishing it out nicely, and I think it'll be great. But one thing I was a little concerned about, is there anything in the clause about if they seed it late, it doesn't, so right that they'll come back and reseed it? Or
The way this whole project was done, this is really a private project. So what we are doing is buying a finished product with their assistance with other churches. So the point of it is by not controlling the project, I think our legal team feels that we can avoid prevailing wage and keep the cost of the project down. So we don't have those kinds of contract specifications that you would normally have in a public project. It's sort of if we think if we like what we have at the end of the day, we purchase it. But if we don't, then they have to bring it to spec.
Okay, so we do have a little bit of leverage that it actually has good have.
Yeah, because we write the check on there, they don't write the check to us, so that's the leverage.
Right.
Yeah, that's always good leverage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
How many groups came and visited the Valley Concrete site?
We had 6 on total, is that right?
Sounds, yeah, that sounds right.
I think we had 6 all total. We'll be pretty excited if we get 4 good proposals. And we have reason to believe it's going to be at least 3 or 4. Well, I don't know, at least, but should have 3 or 4. Hadn't predicted that. I hope I don't give anyone a plus of 3 because that will really look stupid. I should say we have reason to believe there'll be really 2 good ones.
Additional questions for Mr. Klein? Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Patton, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Maybe foggy, maybe dark. I think it's a great day. I really do. Mr. Mayor, Council, always great to be here. First, in the spirit of collaboration, and I'll do this quickly. I have quite a bit I wanted to go over, but I will do this quickly. In the spirit of collaboration enjoyed by Monmouth and Independence, Minot wants to initiate a new report protocol. With your permission, council members, Minot will deliver a parallel report to each council through their Minot board member council liaison. If this is acceptable to the council, and in particular to you, Jerry Hoffman, Councilor Hoffman, Independence will receive their report in time for delivery at the second council meeting of the month, and Monmouth for their first. These reports will not include any detailed financial reports, as those are delivered directly by the Financial Advisory Committee to the Minot Board. Excuse me. Today, Minot reports to you about market penetration. After an exhaustive review of all city-county addresses, gathering information on owner-occupied housing and rental units in each community, in looking at the demographic of internet users, we have come to the following conclusions. The number of available passings in Monmouth and Independence has been estimated in the past in excess of 10,000 addresses, but this quickly proved to be inflated. Addresses also include vacant lots and a number of city, county, and state-owned properties. The second group is either already served through a contractual agreement with Minot or does not have any structures on the property. When all the variables were considered, Minot's penetration rate is much larger than the 61% recently advertised. Minot today delivers at least data to over 75% of the residences and businesses in Monmouth and Independence. There are approximately 1,500 addresses yet to be acquired. Of these, about 400 have dark ONTs on them, meaning that Minot equipment exists at this site, allowing it to be an easier sale. Current studies show that an average population of 13% of the public will not be users of the internet. Breaking it down further, of the 1,500 addresses available for acquisition, 400 plus or minus have dark ONTs. 195, the 13%, will never be internet users by choice or by economy. That leaves just 900 addresses that have never been connected to Minot. Minot will go after every address possible, absolutely. We work on this every day. Everybody at Minot is in sales. Now, some may choose to spin this news as, once again, another disappointment coming from Minot. But I need to tell you, and as the one charged with finding the right recipe for this little giant of a company we have here, I find it first as an enlightenment of facts that have somehow been skirted and manipulated all along the way. But secondly, actually I find it encouraging, as this information gives us the ability to finally focus our concentration where lies the greatest opportunity for the needed success for Minot. There are two clear and immediate options. The purchase service model, wherein Minot provides low capacity Wi-Fi reaching to the edge of the cities, available to citizens and visitors alike. Monmouth and Independence would become the first all-connected city in Oregon, and perhaps in the United States for that matter. This would be an option that would help us address the overwhelming debt structure that Minot struggles with. You know, last week we were at the Oregon Communications Conference in Hood River. Sean, your presentation was right on target and very well done, by the way. One theme of the conference was that fiber is fundamental to realizing our technological future. Providing open data encourages the local development of apps and empowers inventive ideas right here at home. It was clear that it really does take a village to realize the future. We are in an excellent position to move aggressively into the future. and a purchase service model may be fundamental to that. Secondly, we need to go outside of Monmouth and Independence to seek more income streams, more customers that are available to us here in the two cities. Several possibilities are already coming together. With the remediation of Minnet systems, we have capabilities never before realized. We can sell the excesses. Minnet at this time must refrain from further comment on this option until more information has been gathered and processed. The second possibility is expansion. To fully realize this solution, Minnet needs assistance in aggressive pursuit of grants. Minnet also needs a board-developed and supported plan of expansion, reaching out as it is feasible, perhaps to Dallas, Falls City, Buena Vista, Grand Ronde, and more. In conclusion, we ask you, the council, to envision Minet's future. You already know that Minnet is an economic driver. How will we move Minnet forward into its fullest potential? We encourage you to think about all of these issues, and please make your thoughts known to us at Minnet. With that, I chopped it up a little bit to shorten it up. I'm wide open for any questions you might have.
Questions? Please.
I had a question about the reporting. If Jerry's willing to do the reporting, but you said that's not going to include financial information. Will there be periodic financial reports to the councils?
Yes, I believe quarterly is the expectation.
That's great. That's fine.
And quarterly is when I would be here as well.
So that's okay with you? Everybody else okay? With that? All right.
Sounds practical.
Okay. That sounds good.
Dumped a lot on you. I'll have a send report off to Karen and provide
Thank you.
each of you that I dumped off here.
Thank you, appreciate that. I was going to request that because
You got it there.
I'll have to. Okay. Is there anything anybody else wants to ask at this point? You're real interested to hear how some of this evolves, and I'll try to make some connections for you also.
And you've done a great job, and we appreciate it. And it needs to be recognized, and we do appreciate it. Because some of it's coming from fruition, as you're well aware.
Thank you. If there's nothing else at this moment, thank you for being here this morning. At staff, as we move to new business, at staff suggestion, I'm going to alter the, since we have guests that are in today, what we'll do is we'll take C and D, move those up so that, because we want to hear from Ray Bartlett. We don't want to delay this any longer. Thank you for letting me tease you, Ray. But we'll do these first, and then we'll come back to some of the internal things. Good morning, Ray, and welcome to Independence this morning.
Good morning, thank you. Pleasure to be here. Let's see, Karen, how you're working on it, okay. Did this get passed out to you? Did not. That's fine. So we want to talk about our going forward with sewer and water and recommendations on rate increases from here out. And good, screen. Let's go to the next screen. First of all, let me just set this up. You'll have to click that a few times, Karen, because it's set up in motion. One more click. So this is what's happened to your sewer and water since 2009. What it is a reflection of how much water and sewer services you were selling. And between 2009 and 2012, you lost about 13% of your sales. Calculate this by backing out the rate increases you went through during that period, but in real terms, you lost a lot of business during that period. And in 2015, you're back where you were in 2009. So how did you respond to that? And the next clip will tell us that, among other things, you cut your operating costs for both sewer and water. So in 2009, whatever you're spending that year, by the time you got to 2012, you had cut operating costs about 44%. And you did that by reducing staff. You probably remember how painful all of that was. And you also had Public Works cut back on routine maintenance and replacement that they would normally be going through. And then the next slide tells you how much you increased rates. Okay, so they went up about 63% over that 6-year period. And that included increases for MINET, increases to backup, general fund expenditures, including for this building. So there were a number of things going on during that period. So I just wanted to set the stage for you to know that Great Recession had quite an impact on independence and on the two utilities that you operate. So the next slide, Karen. Sewer utility, let's talk about it first. Similar to two, and go to the next slide. And if you watch Karen, you'll have to click it a couple of times to make it work. One more click. There we go. Debt service historically has been relatively low. It's like under $100,000 per year. Net operating income, click there, Karen, has been just above that level. And net operating income, of course, is your revenue from your rates minus the operating expenses. And going forward, we expect that it will increase modestly. And you'll notice that net operating revenues are lower than expected debt service towards the end of the forecast. To explain that a little bit more in a minute. We have two debts planned, one in 2017, one in 2019. I'm going to click the next slide there. The bond measure in 2017 is about $3.9 million to cover costs of the wastewater treatment plant and for a major trunk line lease repair and replacement and pump station. And in 2019, once again, to expand the wastewater treatment plant and change the treatment technology that goes on there. Right now, the plant is out of compliance with an NPDES permit. Also, if you go back in the history a little bit, you'll notice in 2012 and 2013, the amount of the cash you had available dropped to pretty close to zero. And if we go to the next slide, Karen, I'll show you what's going on with the capital side of the market. I might as well click it a couple of times. You'll notice that red line is capital expenditures, and you'll see that in 2013, 14, and 15, you're pretty much at zero capital expenditures. That was because you cut materials and services rather substantially during the recession. And a lot of times capital improvements are all materials and services in the budget. Well, when it gets to the auditor goes through and finds out what's left for part of that was actually capitalized. And hard as they looked in 12, 13, and 14, you couldn't find much in capital expenditures that was done. So the system needs a fair amount of repair. And you can see that there's pretty substantial increases in capital expenditures in the forecast. The next slide, Karen. And again, your cash that's going out, and those two big bumps are caused by the bond proceeds that come in those 2 years. The bonds that we have planned here are both market level bonds at market rates. The city qualifies both with USDA's water and wastewater program and with the state of Oregon's state revolving loan fund program, both of which offer lower interest rates and longer terms than you can probably get at the market, which would reduce the costs that are associated with those programs. It's also possible you may qualify for some grants. Your sewer rates are getting to the level that you probably qualify under USDA for some grant funding. So I encourage the staff to apply to both those agencies to see what you can get. And then you can do better than this forecast with either one of those funding programs. And they're both, of course, have funds available today. In the future, we'll see where it goes. Both depend on federal appropriations to fund the programs, so the sooner you apply, the better, in my view. Karen? Just to summarize, deferred maintenance and capital replacements are needed. Wastewater treatment plants out of compliance and needs to be repaired, and 2 new bond issues are anticipated. And what impact will it have on the rates? Well, that's the next slide. So basic monthly rate, this is the single family household rate. May as well click it again, Karen. There we go. So between 2010 and 2015, on average, we were increasing the rates about 11% per year. That didn't all happen smoothly, of course. We had a year in there which we had double rate increases in 2012. Going forward, we're looking at an average rate increase of about 4.4% per year. Flattens out a little bit. The forecast tries to smooth out those rate increases so you don't have to do those double-digit increases that we've had to do in the past. And is kind of anticipating that you will do better with financing these projects than going through the municipal bond market. Just why that earlier slide looked like net operating revenues were less than the amount needed to cover debt service. That'll probably turn out to be a glorious challenge someplace down the road once all that out. The rate increases average between 2 and 5% per year, and should cover increases in operating costs as well. Some of the risks associated with this is whether or not you can get the financing through state or federal levels. The city is also part of the state's retirement program, which is running a deficit. The city is still waiting to find out what that shoes and feel like when it falls. And there's workers' compensation, which has been relatively stable, at least compared to the retirement program for the municipalities. There's nothing to say we couldn't slide into another national recession, which, as we know from experience, doesn't treat you extremely well. We're never quite sure what's going to happen to interest rates in the market.
You're full of optimism.
We also base this on a growth rate of about 2% per year this year and next year, and then sliding to 1% and then to 0.5%. Clearly, the city in the past has grown more rapidly than that, but it's also an economy that's been subject to boom and bust cycles in the past. So we've also, this forecast relies on a pretty modest forecast of growth. The 2% this year and next year is pretty much in the bag. In other words, you've got developments underway that are likely to produce that kind of increase in sewer and water revenues. So if growth occurs more rapidly, you can expect that revenues will go up much faster than operating costs, and consequently that may lighten the load in the future for increases. Well, we take a look at water really quickly as well. I'll go through the same set of slides. The operating results, amazingly enough, look pretty close to what they were in sewer, with a couple of exceptions. The darker line up there, bar, represents debt service that the water utility was carrying. And in 2014, you may recall, the citizens passed a general obligation bond, and we refunded the 2 water bonds, revenue bonds were outstanding. So that in 2015, the debt service that is attributable to water rates went away. Debt service went to 0, and it stayed that way. And that debt service is now being paid from property taxes. In 2012 was the first year that you made payments on the Minnet debt. Prior to that time, the bonds that were passed for Minnet had set aside money to pay debt service in the first 2 years, and so it did not come out of the water fund. The water fund was pledged to secure the Minnet debt in Independence. Monmouth used their electric utility to underwrite the debt. So in 2012, he made the first payment on that. In 2013 and 14, the amount of debt payment was reduced a bit. 2015, we're back up to about $560,000, up to $900,000 a year in debt service on Independence's share of Minnet's debt. We assumed in the forecast that that level would continue. So it stays at $562,000 per year, assuming then that you're going to cover about almost 6/9 of, or 2/3 of the Minnet debt service. If Minnet becomes more profitable, the amount that you'll have to pay in debt service should be reduced. In other words, Minnet pays its operating costs first and then pays towards debt service after that. So that's a large question mark about where things go forward. We're keeping cash reserves at just under $1 million for most of the forecast. A little larger cash reserves than we're expecting in sewer, just to backstop whatever happens in Minnet. I think that's a risk that you'll continue to face long in the future. And Karen, I think there's one more click you could add. There we go. Capital expenditures. Just like sewer capital expenditures during the depths of the recession went to pretty close to zero. The amount of capital expenditures needed in water is substantially less than sewer. We're looking at about $1.25 million in the next year to make improvements there. And many of the improvements after that are smaller than they are in the sewer utility. There's also possibilities for other capital improvements that may be necessary in the future that aren't currently on the schedule. And Karen, let's take a look at capital expenditures, and we'll flip it all up there at once. You can see the debt service, and then the next slide shows the debt service for Minnet staying at $562,000 per year going forward. A couple more clicks, Karen, and we'll show the capital expenditures and the cash reserves coming out of that. And again, the city qualifies for USDA and State of Oregon SRF drinking water programs for lower cost financing than is shown here. We're anticipating a revenue bond of 25 years at about 5% interest in this particular forecast. I think you can do better with either one of those two agencies, and again, I encourage staff to apply to that. So the risks associated with this in the next slide. Burden maintenance and capital replacement are necessary. It's been put off a bit. Water utility debt's taken off by a GO bond measure, which has been helpful. Uncertain obligation for Minnet going forward, and one additional bond is needed throughout this forecast period. So the impact on rates, we're trying to accomplish the same thing here as we did in sewer. In the past, it's averaged about 9% per year since 2010. Current. Going forward, looking at something just under 3% per year on average. No rate increase this past year, and then 2, 3, and 4% increases thereafter. And again, maintaining that cash balance is going to be fairly important just because of the risks associated with Minnet and additional capital improvements that may be necessary beyond the forecast here. So, in summary, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about this. The forecast looks a lot better than the road we've just been down.
Questions? Go, please.
So, great report, Ray. Good information. And it's kind of off the subject a little bit, but I was looking at some income data for the City of Independence. I think it was on citydata.com. And what I noticed there is that in Independence, about 25% of the households in Independence make $20,000 or less a year. And when you look at the $30,000 or less column, it's like 40%. So I'm just curious if, in your experience, have you worked with cities who have taken a look at not only the financial side, but the affordability concerns that would be there in increasing rates when you have a large population of lower income folks?
Yes, both the SRF program and probably to a lesser extent, USDA program look at affordability. In fact, the main criteria in the SRF programs, both sewer and water, is affordability. And you're right, in the Independence is a part of the Salem metropolitan area and attracts probably lower income households to it. And these are pretty brutal increases. have been in the past, much softer ones going forward, but nonetheless, the total cost is pretty high for those households. Communities have set up assistance programs for very low-income households, and those have been helpful to a number of households that have difficulty, especially during the year, but not all year long. Those programs have also been set up to be fairly tight after a while, because otherwise they get abused. So that's another possibility that you have. But yes, on the other hand, it is what it costs to supply those two services. I should have a magic bullet for that one, but I don't.
Councilor Martin?
I'm looking at the percentage of increases in sewer and water rates over the last 10 years. And sewers increased will increase about 100%, and water around 80, 82. Are there comparable rate increases across the state and other cities?
No, especially in the Oregon coast, where it isn't unusual to talk about $100 a month sewer rates. That's usually split between GO bonds and revenue bond and property taxes and user fees. But yeah, you're getting probably on 50% level in Willamette Valley anyway. But costs have been driven up. Wastewater in particular, where treatment requirements have increased pretty dramatically. And in drinking water, there's been an increasing effort to identify and take out more elements that occur in drinking water. So it's getting harder and harder to produce quality water and pull the effluent from treatment.
Ray, a follow-up question to that, if I may. Would it be fair to characterize some of the other municipalities as being where they are on their cycle? Because I know that there's an up push in a number of different, it's just where it, when you get there, some places have already had to push things up, and other people haven't talked to other mayors and they haven't got there yet. It's looming.
Yeah, that's true. Capital improvements in water and wastewater usually follow a pattern, which is that the capital improvements aren't very visible. So you build a large water treatment plant or wastewater treatment plant with 20 years of capacity in it, and it starts out being maybe 60 or 70% of capacity in operation. By the time it fills up 20 years from now, the wastewater treatment plant usually needs to be replaced because it wears out. Water treatment plants tend to last more like 50 years, 40 to 50 years, but yes, there's kind of a boom and bust cycle to capital improvements in water and wastewater systems. So. And you've been through the bust during the last 10 years, and now it's time to make up for the deferred maintenance so far.
Councilor Hoffman, I think you had a question.
No, I'm just
following up.
Yes.
Additional questions related to this? Wow. I appreciate the work you've done. This has been
Pleasure.
really helpful. And it makes decision-making a little clearer.
This presentation was easier than some of the former ones.
Thank you. We appreciate that. If there are no more questions from council, this is an action item, and the action suggested is direct staff to prepare legislation for adoption for a December meeting to implement in January. That's a suggestion. Discussion on that on the action item. That's on page 1. Yeah, we would need to do that.
Just a question. Your forecast assumed that we made the increases you recommended, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I move that we direct staff to prepare the necessary legislation for a January 2016 implementation of a rate adjustment to be considered at its first meeting in December.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Discussion.
Well, December of 2016?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I would like to suggest that at some point explore the affordability impacts of these rate increases on the people that live in the community. I think that it's clear from a financial perspective, when we look at the age and condition of the system, that improvements have to be made. They'll cost something, but we also have, I think we also have a role in taking a look at how these continued increases are affecting the families that live here in the community. So
That's a good idea.
I'm going to look at staff for a moment. Mr. Klein, you were about ready to, you probably were thinking the same thing, Derek. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to help Ray with that response, and he got to that point. What we can do is go ahead and survey other communities, and there's probably a fair amount of that work that's already been done on our behalf through the League of Cities, but also on our listserv. But I know there are a number of cities that provide some kind of rate relief based on a needs basis. I mean, the way to do that, of course, is somebody else has to pick up that bill. So how do you, that's the conversation, obviously, the hard conversation you have to have. We can schedule that for a coming study session. So if you'd like, we will go ahead and pull that information together and have it ready for a conversation for you.
Can that be part of the process that we're starting now?
Well, I think what I would suggest to you, it certainly can be, what I would suggest to you, one way or another, I think you need to implement the rate program that's been laid out in this approach. We don't want to get caught in the situation where we have in the past where we've deferred rate increases and then have to come back with a very large increase. It's much easier to budget increase at this level now on a regular basis. I mean, really what we're talking about is a latte without the milk at this point per month. Not to be, cheap at the cost of that. We're probably about a $3 or $4 per average household at this point increase overall. We don't want to get to where we're talking 15, 20% increases all of a sudden again because we've deferred action. So I would urge, we will get the information to you right away, but I would suggest to you that to move forward with the rate implementation, regardless of the timing on whether you implement a rate relief program for folks.
Good. I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the mitigation opportunities that Ray mentioned, the advantages that can be from low-interest loans and/or grants. And I know that there are a number of those kind of programs. I'm wondering if we could have that same information when we get that, so that we can take a look at what those options.
We can certainly provide that to you. It's something we're pursuing right now. There's just those kinds of we're pursuing right now an income survey through PSU to see if we can qualify for further qualify for grants. The last census did treat us well on where the average income per household income was at. We think that we can come back and take a look at that and get a better result through a post study with PSU and get back into some of the grant programs. But yeah, we're always evaluating, to the day of, we're always evaluating what our options are in terms of financing. But we're happy to give you more information on, what we know, what Ray has talked to you about.
So we can just get that scheduled for our next, I'm not sure when our next study session is, but we can do that.
To be clear, those resources were towards the cost of a capital expenditure.
Understood.
So it's not a program to drive rates down, other than to the extent that you can reduce your capital expenditure. The other thing to be aware of, Ray gave you probably the most bleak approach to this view in his forecast, as he's paid to do. But we really understated what we believe is going to be the positive impact of the Valley Concrete development on this project, as well as other development in the community. It's a pretty conservative approach to the forecast. If you look at how the rates are stepped up, you'll notice that the lowest rates are in the first couple of years, and then they step up going outward. Hopefully, with the kind of development that we think will happen on that site, you may never have to see those stepped up increases. So now I've given you the opposite side of that. But I figure when that happens, I'll be retired. It won't matter what I told you.
The next work study is November 10th. Would that be, is that too quick to get?
We can pull together something by then. I don't know if it'll be enough for you to make some kind of decision. We can give you an overview of what's out there.
Does that sound okay for us?
I'm just trying to wrap my mind around the magnitude of the impacts that are happening to the lower income families. And I don't feel like at this point I have enough information to really understand that before I make a decision that affects that folks. But I didn't bring that up with the intent of holding up the motion.
No, I didn't hear that. I heard request for information, and then all we're trying to do is have staff prepare for, so that we're ready to move.
And that we have that information concurrently.
Right. Does anybody else have anything else they need to say at this point? All right, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. And Ray, I understand that this may be your last time joining us here at Independence, and that you're doing whatever that retired accounting people do.
That's true. This probably is my last appearance here.
Well, I just want to take a moment and on behalf of all of us to say thank you. You worked long and hard for us. Our community is better because of the efforts that you've put forth, the information that you put forward to us decision makers to make decisions. Sometimes it wasn't always easy information, but you always presented it in a very professional and forward-looking. And so I want to say thank you on behalf of all of us for your efforts, and we hope you'll continue to come and visit with us. Mr. Klein, I think you wanted to add something.
Let me just add too. I've been in Oregon just for 13 years, but it seems like wherever I end up going, and when you ask wherever I've worked, there's Ray. For one thing, I never can quite figure that out. I think, okay, he's ours, but he's not. It seems to be shared by everybody. But then when you get on the listserv or whatever, the manager's listserv, and people start asking about, who do you turn to for economic advice or whatever, help with these kinds of programs. Here comes Ray's name, virtually every city. It's like he represents virtually every city in the state, it almost seems like at times. So I know the guy's been putting in yeoman efforts and traveling, his cars was moving out once every couple of months. But it's been great working with you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move forward and with, I think the study session is the appropriate on Park SDCs, Mr. Danko.
Good morning. Today, I'm here to talk about the Park SDC, our system development charge. So we charge new development for improvements to the park system. If you recall, back in July, you adopted the Park Master Plan document. As part of that discussion, we talked about reviewing the Park SDC based on the new Park Master Plan, and you asked staff to proceed with that work, to look at it and look into it, which we've done. Today we have with us our consultants for that work, both the Park Master Plan, Robin Craig, you remember, and Mr. Sean Piggott, who worked on the SDC components of that project. Just to back up a little bit and do a quick review for you, the Park SDC is just one of 5 that the city charges and has charged new development for, I think it was 1992 or 94 when we first implemented system development charges in the city. The other 4 systems are stormwater, sewer, water, and transportation. The Park SDC has not been adjusted since 2004. So its current rate at $1,741 per new single-family home has been in effect for about 11 years. We have the methodology. If you would like to consider an increase, to go ahead and do that. In fact, we are recommending that you do that, to raise the Park SDC to $3,815 per single-family home. Existing development, existing homes don't pay that fee, but new development would. And, excuse me, it's my belief that that we won't impact new development with this small increase, because our overall standing, our overall SDC fee is about average or less than average for communities, surrounding communities. And that's in part of the documents, the information that Sean will review with you with this PowerPoint presentation. The purpose of our work session is just to give you a PowerPoint presentation and suggest that you direct staff to set the necessary public hearing dates in the future to adopt a new rate, if that's the direction that you'd like to go after you see Sean's presentation. I'm suggesting that that is the direction we should go in. And again, I really don't see a financial impact to the city, because although the Home Builders Association and home builders have come before you in the past to testify that this will impact new development in town, I've never seen that happen. In fact, when we adopted increases to all 5 systems in the past 10 years ago, there was a lot of gloom and doom presented to you by the Homeowners Association, and we grew by record amounts, over 5% for years in a row. Following that, the city is becoming a really desirable place for people to come and start families and to live, and I see that happening in the future more and more, particularly with the Valley Concrete development and the continued development of the downtown with Spur. I just don't believe that our SDC rates, if you look at that slide when it comes up, you'll see that we are just average. The money is needed to help us implement this document, just as we did back in 1996 when we adopted the first plan. You also adopted an SDC to go along with that and help us complete that entire document. And sure, we'd like to see that happen in this document as well. With that, I'm going to let Sean step up and present his PowerPoint presentation, and then we are all 3 available to answer questions for you.
Good morning, welcome to council.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Mayor Council, it's always difficult to follow Ray Bartlett. That was a very nice sentiment you expressed. As a fellow financial consultant for municipalities, he's a great guy and always been very difficult competition, so I'm kind of glad he's retired. We want to talk about system development charges in the area of parks today, and if we can cue that up. And just go to page 2, please. That's all right. So I wanted to cover maybe 6 areas with you today, very briefly. One, just a quick review of the statutory playing field we're all operating under. As Mike indicated, you've got SDCs in all your infrastructure areas, so I'm sure this is not all new to you, so I'm not going to go through a lot of detail. Your current structure, just so you know what you're doing now, the service levels, which really define what's eligible for SDC costs, the overall master plan costs, and then a proposed approach towards revising your SDCs, and then the schedule for adoption, which is also part of the statutory framework, that timelines that you need to recognize, and then obviously any questions. And since this is more by way of a study session, feel free to jump in at any point. It'd be great. Okay. So on page 3, the legal framework, again, just a quick reminder, SDCs pertain only to capital improvements, and they're a one-time fee charged at the time of connection or approval of the plan. So it's very simple in that regard. Next page. There are 2 elements to SDCs. One is a reimbursement charge, which is, in its simplest form, a buy-in to existing capacity. And then on next page, the improvement fee, which pertains to planned future projects. In the world of parks, the orientation is typically towards that improvement fee. You've got the plan identified, you have the projects identified, the orientation, as is the case with Independence, is focused solely on the improvement portion of the fee. So that's what we'll be focusing on today's discussion. Next slide. So just a quick review of where you're at now. As Mike indicated, you have not revisited the Parks SBC since 2004. It is based only on the improvement portion of the fee. There's no reimbursement portion, so it's all planned future projects. You only apply the SDC to residential properties, which again is typical of most SDCs, since the vast majority of the park's users are the residences within the community. In 2004, you eliminated the land acquisition cost from your SDC calculation, which was not necessary, and we've reinserted those land acquisition costs in the proposed revised methodology. Back then, the total cost allocated to growth was just under $2 million. You had future population growth of just over 3,000 people, and 2.9 persons in a single-family home and 2.7 in a multifamily. And as you'll see, based on the revised Johnson economics analysis, you now have 2.99 persons per home, and that's reflected in the revisions. And as Mike indicated, right now, the cost per single-family residence for your Parks SDC is $1,741, and because there's fewer people per unit on the multifamily side at 2.7, that SDC is $1,619 per unit. So far, so good? Okay, so current service levels. Yes?
Do you see an increase on the multifamily side with more people opting to rent rather than try to purchase homes because they can?
Yeah. I think, again, I'm not sure what the demographics are in Independence, but certainly there is a tendency to, since you're not being able to buy a single-family residence, you're going to rent a multifamily unit. So developers are responding to that and are building more duplexes, triplexes, and multifamily units. And that will be captured in this analysis.
Can you speak for a moment, too, as we were talking about single-family residence? We're looking at potentially some large developments. How does the SDCs figure into some of those large kind of developments that we're looking at?
Well, the SDC is, in case of a new subdivision coming online, if that developer pulls a permit for X number of single-family units, then he would be charged X times your SDC.
Right. I'm thinking like a multiplex, apartment complex, townhomes, or anything like that. How does it?
That would fall under the multifamily category. Okay. Would be charged accordingly per unit.
Yeah.
So in terms of service levels, what we're looking for is existing deficiencies in the existing parks system. And the reason we're looking for those deficiencies is that we cannot ask new connections to the system to pay for the deficiencies that already exist. We're only asking them to participate in things that add capacity that they're going to make use of. So in looking at each of those service levels opposite the various categories of parks, we identified only the neighborhood park as having a deficiency. And that deficiency is about 12.24 acres. So we have to, I'm just flagging this now because when we get into the methodology, you're going to see that reemerge. We have to account for that as we get through the proposed methodology. So, a couple pages down the road, please. So let's first of all look at improvements to existing parks. I won't go through all of them, but the bottom line in terms of an SDC and my focus is that improvements to existing parks account for about $15.6 million in improvements. It's a significant commitment. Now, as we go into the next slide, first of all, it's important when we talk about improvements to existing parks that we're not talking about repairs and replacements. We're actually talking about increasing the level of performance and effectively the capacity within those parks to accommodate growth. This is a very, very important distinction in terms of SDC eligibility. And reviewing the various parks plans with Greenworks and with staff, we're convinced that in fact these costs do reflect that. That they are not repairs and replacements, but they are existing capacity as measured in improved performance of those parks and the ability of those parks to accommodate more folks. So in just going through the math, we take that $15.6 million identified, and we're going to do a proportional approach. In other words, we allocate that expense over both the existing and future user base. And in 20 years, the city's population is expected to be 15,332 folks. So if we use that 15,332 as the denominator, we have that numerator of the 15.6 million. The math is pretty straightforward. Comes out to $1,023 per capita per resident, or when we multiply that times the 2.99 people per single family home, we come up with a cost of $3,059 per single family residence. And adjusting that for multifamily, it would be 2.7 times that. So again, proportional. The logic is simple, but it's indisputable. We're all in this together, and we're not asking you to pay for things that we're going to be using. We're all part of this user base, and we all share proportionally in the cost. Okay, so far? Okay, next page. Now we get into the new proposed neighborhood parks and trails. The new neighborhood parks amount to just over $2.8 million, and the trails at $5.9 million. Okay, so those are two important cost categories. And also point out that these new neighborhood parks take us back to that identified deficiency I mentioned earlier. Okay, so in the next slide. The city has determined also that it is reasonable to assume that future new neighborhood parks and trails will be partially funded through grants. Okay. We're anticipating that upwards of 25% of both new neighborhood parks and trails will be funded through grant resources. Grants are considered contributed capital and are not SDC eligible. So that's another adjustment we need to make to our calculation. We're only asking new development to chip in for our costs, our real costs, in providing parks. And those costs do not include resources from grants and other contributed capital. Is that okay? Okay. So on to page 13. So again, talking about our new neighborhood parks, they're at $2.8 million. If we take that 25% grant fund out, we're now down to an SDC eligible cost of $2.1 million. But we have that current deficiency in neighborhood parks of that 8.62 acres. If we take the average cost per acre for a new neighborhood park, that's both acquisition and development, that comes out to an estimated $294,000 per acre. Multiplying that times the 8.62, we come up with a cost of that deficiency of $2.5 million. Now that exceeds the amount that's actually SDC eligible. So by going through these steps, we've effectively eliminated the need for new development to pay for any portion of these new neighborhood parks, simply because the existing deficiency outstrips the amount that they would actually participate in. Is that one registering? Again, the law is very specific. We cannot ask new development to pay for existing system deficiencies, only for the new capacity they participate in.
One question, on page 7, it showed the deficiency acreage for neighborhood parks at 12.24. How did we get to 8.62? I must have missed that.
Well, the 8.62 is the actual calculated parks deficiency. The total parks eligibility is a different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, so on to page 14. The final category is new trails. and the new trails amount to $5.194 million. Again, taking that 25% grant assumption, we're at $3.895 million, which is SDC eligible. We're proposing to use the same proportionate base we used before, existing and future residential customers, at 15,332. So that calculation comes out at $254 per capita, or $759 per single-family residence. The very same logic we used under the existing parks improvements. Okay, so we've got those three components. We zeroed out one, and we have two to build from. So on page 15, we have one other area. There is a compliance and administrative cost the city incurs to manage their SDCs, and the statute specifically allows you to recover that cost. Right now, the city applies a 5% administrative charge to the SDC. If we apply that to the proposed Parks SDC, that would amount to an additional $191 for a single-family home. And we're proposing that that be included in the SDC charge. Again, totally appropriate and allowable. And it's the way the city's operating right now. So to roll all these into the proposed SDC, we have the improvements to existing parks at $3,059. There is no SDC eligibility for the new parks. The new trails would be $759, and that administrative expense $191. So the total proposed SDC would be $4,009. And that's up from the current SDC of $1,741. But you're also looking at, what, $23 million worth of capital improvements that you didn't have before, so not surprising. And Mayor, this speaks again to your point earlier when Ray was up about, I relate this to a conveyor belt. It's where you are on the capital improvement planning process determines how high you're going to be relative to other cities in terms of the SDC. And in relation to parks, since you haven't really adjusted it since 2004, and given the fact that you're committing to a significant parks master plan, that increase is certainly within reason. Okay, so the next slide. Here's the inevitable SDC comparisons that folks like to see. We tried to identify cities that were comparable, with the exception of Portland, of course, but they occupied the top of the chart in just about everything, so I felt obligated to throw them in. But in any event, you can see that as you go on this conveyor belt relative to parks, you're going to be proportionally higher than other cities, but as cities develop their master plans and their costs become known, then they'll leapfrog over you. But this is the way you stack up at present. And as Mike indicated, you are pretty much in the middle.
I did a little quick calculating that using these numbers, we're about 11.7-ish currently-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And which gives some perspective where we are on the chart.
11.7 population.
No, 11.7, what our current, if you take the totals and
So it would put us just above Lincoln City.
Okay.
right, yeah, just, that's some quick ishing, but just,
Okay.
It's a technical accounting term.
yeah, ishing. Yeah, that's where we currently are, so I was agreeing with the speakers, what I said.
Oh, thank you.
Is that people are in different cycles. And
They are.
Yeah.
They are. And again, I think we're remedying some potential flaws in your existing methodology. Primarily, we are including land costs, which really should be part of your calculation. So we're improving on that point too.
Is the 25% grant assumption, is that middle of the road? Is that aggressive?
I'd say middle of the road. In the parks world, grants drive a lot of the decisions to move forward with parks, and talking with staff, that's going to be really pivotal as to whether these are going to be financially viable. So a 25% factor, I think, is totally reasonable.
Another question I had, maybe more to staff, is what about the other SDCs? Are we going to be looking at some of those too, or do we feel we're pretty in pretty good shape on the other SDCs?
I think how we looked at this is a little bit strategically, but if you were to approach you with what the needs would likely be with all the SDCs all at once, we would look very different on that chart. So we think it makes more sense to approach these in terms of need, most pressing need, most pressing desire, and we think the Park SDC is probably the most wanting at this point, and why we came to you first with this one. We will over time address each and every SDC in our system. You do have some escalators built into some of the other ones, which help us keep on track, but we do need to reflect current capital planning as well. So the long answer to your question is yes, we will come to you with those, but not as a group. I don't think that makes, we need to stay somewhat on par with it. I agree totally with Mike's assessment that in the end of the day, we are very attractive community development. SDCs are not reflecting any construction decisions that we're aware of. That's my experience in listening to other managers throughout the state, watching what they do, other places that intend to give SDC relief. It really doesn't seem to generate what they're looking for by and large, certainly not long term. So we will come back to you, but we don't want to be at the top of the list.
Above Portland?
Yeah. We definitely don't want to be above Portland.
So, any other questions? So on page 18, getting back to that timeline I mentioned earlier, as Mike indicated, you adopted your master plan July 21st of this year. We've gone through a couple of iterations with staff in terms of the SDC calculation in August, and now holding a work session in October. Now we're getting into the statutory requirements as far as advance notice. And the first one is the 90-day notice to anybody that's on your list of interested persons related to anything the city does on SDCs. So if you don't have such a list, most cities don't, but it probably behooves you to contact the local homeowners association at a minimum to let them know that a revision to your SDC methodology for parks is under consideration. And that needs to be done 90 days in advance of the planned public hearing on adoption of the SDC. The next trigger point is a 60-day advance notice to have the methodology available for public review. So working back from a date, and again talking with staff, feel like we need to have this in front of you for adoption no later than the first part of March. And so working back from that day on the 90-day, we would need to get that notification on the 90-day prepared in November, and then the methodology available in December, and that'll tee you up for adoption of the SDC in February, March timeframe.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is that, and I'm looking to staff for this one, because knowing that there's some housing developments in the queue, would this time schedule allow us to capture anticipated growth?
Yes, certainly. In fact, we had a meeting with the developer of what was called the Independence Subdivision, as you recall, down on 7th Street. That was roughly exactly a year ago. That was approved by the Planning Commission. They got hung up with the Department of State Lands because of wetland issues, and also the Corps of Engineers because it's a joint permit program. They are basically through both of those agencies now. But of course now is rainy season, so I suspect that in late spring is probably when we would see them, May or June. break ground on phase one, and this would capture their development. The Coast Valley Concrete is more like 2017, 16, 17, so we'll capture that development as well.
Appreciate it. Additional questions for the presenters? Make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Thank you. Wonderful. Folks, this is an action item because if we want to move forward with this, we have there's a mechanism that needs to begin. What are people's pleasures? Sure.
I move to direct staff to set the required public hearing dates necessary to complete an update of the park SDC fee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? I hear no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I appreciated the completeness of the report. It was helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was good. Okay. We're going to move promptly forward here. We have a public hearing. I have to get to my right page here. Karen, what page am I going to?
Oh, there is no case, you just need to open a public hearing.
Okay, I'm opening a public hearing on community development block grants. Will you tell us what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then I'll open. Do I open it first, or? Okay, I'm opening a public hearing on what Karen tells me we're going to publicly hear about.
So it is true, they do run everything.
Shh, don't tell anybody. Go ahead, Karen.
Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, on July 14, 2015, Mona Edwards of Merritt addressed the council during a duly noticed public hearing regarding the city's eligibility to apply for a 2015 Community Development Block Grant. This hearing is an extension of that hearing. At that hearing, information that had been provided in the required public notice, and which is also to be required to be furnished at the hearing, had been accidentally omitted. There are 4 required elements to be furnished. Just one had been reported, that being the proposed activities that would be undertaken by Merritt with the grant funds. The other required elements are approximately $11.5 million will be awarded to Oregon non-metropolitan cities and counties in 2015. The maximum grant that city or county can receive is $3 million. The estimated amount of grant funds proposed to be used for activities that will meet the national objective of benefit to low and moderate income persons is $75,000. There are no proposed activities that would result in displacement of persons. Also, I would like to note that no additional comments have been received regarding this community development block grant. Thank you, and please do not hesitate to contact either myself or Mona Edwards of Merritt with any questions regarding the grant activity.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments to make? Seeing nobody else stepping to the microphone, let's close this public hearing. Thank you very much. We have completed our requirement. Karen, can you hand out the next document, please? At our last council meeting, we had Christy Munson talk us through a city manager evaluation. And this is a reflection of the discussions that we had because we talked about a flow chart. Thank you. So you can see how this moves forward. So let me walk you through this, please. We're going to have to establish some dates, but we have to establish the criteria. And we have to approve the form is what it amounts to. Okay? And finalize the existing form, and we can do that this morning. We can talk about timelines, and we can ask the city manager to fill out a self-evaluation. Then city manager will provide a self-evaluation to the councilors. I'm reading the document as you go down here, just walking us through here. And then the councilors will fill out their individual evaluations. There's no meeting required for that. And then you'll return the evaluations to yours truly. And then I'll compile all those evaluations using Christie to put all those just going to lump them all together. And then we'll move forward with putting the combined evaluations in front of the city council where we'll discuss. Yeah, Christie and I will handle that task as you discussed. And we'll move forward. Now I'm letting you read this for a second, the colored document, to make sure the steps are okay. Now, as
should give people a moment to read. Just be quiet for a second. Read. There you go.
So, once we reach a consensus, then one or two council members discuss it with the manager.
Discuss it,
Not the facilitator.
That's how
That's the way it reads.
that's how it reads. And or we could all do it, either way. We can do whatever we want, we just have to decide what we want to do in advance. Okay?
Do we have to decide how many counselors would be meeting with the city manager before we actually do the evaluations? I'm wondering if we might want to talk about that when we put these all together.
I think that might be a good, I kind of like that idea, but I didn't want to start changing something that we talked about, without talking to folks. And, because it might be, we put it all together.
Well, I don't know, I just sort of got the impression that the mayor would talk to him, we have this consensus.
Well, at some point we
That we
have,
all want to talk to him.
No, I guess what I'm saying is that we talk before we decide who would
right,
represent.
Tom is suggesting that we
Well, that's
talk.
what it says that.
Yes, I guess it does. Right. I didn't read that far, I was skimming.
Oh, sorry. Skimming?
Because I think, once we reach a consensus on one merged evaluation,
Yeah.
I think that we can decide how we want to move
Yeah.
forward from that. Is that okay with everybody?
Take this recommendation.
Right, move that forward. All right. Well, this is essentially what you talked about before, but I wanted to make sure there was a flow chart so we actually saw what's happening and when and where. In front of you, you also have the annual performance evaluation. We requested, were there any modifications or changes, and we received none. So would it be fair to expect that the document that we have is acceptable because no one suggested any changes? So without objection, we are going to accept the criteria as the document we're going to use. Okay, so what I'm going to ask then, and make sure I'm doing this correctly, folks, is that, so we've now, we're going to accept this evaluation as our criteria, is how we're going to move forward. The process. We've accepted the document and how we're going to do that. So we're going to ask the city manager to fill out a self-evaluation. I'm going to ask him to try to utilize this format. He's indicated he's going to try to cover what he needs to cover with that format. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, if I could blend my self-evaluation as best I can with this.
Okay.
This approach.
All right. And then what we're going to do then is he's going to get the self-evaluation in, as I understand it. Then we're going to distribute that to council, and then we'll have the opportunity to complete our document, and then you're going to get those back to me. Does that sound?
Yes.
Everybody sound okay? So I need to talk about what our next timeline are. Yes, so we don't have to figure everything out, but I'd like to kind of know at least what our next step is. So Mr. Klein, you would probably be able to have your portion completed, when would be realistic?
If you give me a couple of weeks before your next council meeting, that would be great.
Okay.
I can do it sooner if you'd like me to.
What I'd like to do, I'm noodling here, I'm not tied in. If we could get help me out here with a little process, folks. So we'll get Mr. Klein's responses to us, then we're going to need a little time to write up our material, and then I'm going to need some time to compile all of that. And that's going to take a little while, so I wanted to.
Well, we're looking November 24th.
That, I think.
Wait, are you thinking about 2 weeks for each process?
So that'd be okay.
He takes 2 weeks, we take 2 weeks, you take 2 weeks. Does that work for you?
Can we do them simultaneously?
I think.
What do you think about start working on it?
Well, I think that would be,
Yeah.
I think that would be okay, but I'd like, because I know for myself, I'd like to see his comments before I put all
my comments down. So let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that. Mr. Klein will have a couple, will get this to us before our next council meeting. So everybody.
November 10th.
Right, and then we'll be able to complete our stuff, and then you'll get it to me, and we'll move forward from that. Does that seem reasonable?
Okay, then so get our stuff to you by when?
By
November 24th.
By November 24th, it'd be to me by the 24th. And then that'll allow me and Christie to make a compilation.
Which would probably be done by the next council meeting.
I would
which
think
be December 8th.
Which we could probably then have a visit then.
The evaluation, the self-evaluation by David then, will
Would
we
be
be
it.
able to see that?
Yes, yes.
And it's
because-
not just you?
Right, everybody would get that self-evaluation.
Okay.
Everybody,
On
because,
the 10th,
or before.
on or before the 10th.
Does that sound okay with everybody?
And then we
So
can
are we trying to get the full evaluation done and completed by the end of the year?
yeah, I would.
That would seem like a logical,
Are we going to have a council meeting on the 22nd of December?
we could.
I would be willing to do that.
We could do that. Yeah, and I think as long as we talk the process through and be methodical, I think we're gonna be fine here. It's a little bit more work than we've done before, but that's okay. Does that seem okay? So Mr. Klein will have that to us within the 2 weeks. Then you'll have a couple of weeks to put yours together to me. Then I'll have a couple of weeks to do the compilation. And then once we have the compilation, then we can have a group discussion. Does that sound okay? Is everybody fine with that? Karen, you have that?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I have the dates. So step 2 is actually going to be 2 different days. So we'll have city manager provide self-eval
By the 10th.
By the 10th. And
Council members
council-
have it to me by the 24th.
By the 24th. Okay.
And then I'll try to have everything done by the 8th, compiled for everybody,
For a group discussion.
group discussion.
Okay, okay, so we're not even looking at the dates yet for step 3.
We haven't
Nope.
got there yet.
Okay.
And let's see how this works. I think this should flow pretty well. Does everybody feel comfortable with this? I hear everybody shaking their head. I hear everybody shaking their head. Okay, that's apparent. Okay, if that's okay with everybody, great. Okay, is there anything else that we need to do are there any announcements that people want to
I
make?
just had a quick question.
Oh, excuse me.
On the evaluation, will that be available in electronic form that we can fill out electronically?
I can make
We can do
happen.
that.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would make compilation easier.
I will email that to all of the councilors and those of you that wish to do it that way, maybe certainly do that.
Great. What I'm going to do here is that we do have an executive session. What I'm going to do is we're going to do it right here without everybody having to get up. If that's all right with everybody, I'm sorry I'm going to chase some staff out. Is that okay?
It is, but you had opened up for council comment and questions, and I have one of each.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I just wanted to report that the Lifetime Achievement Award ceremony for the Monmouth Independence Community Foundation went very, very well. And we honored Jim and Jean Smith and Joe and Sally Penn. And the question I had was regarding on the management team notes. There's a comment about Legacy Oaks as action item on the council agenda have reached agreement at staff level. Can you explain that a little bit more? Is that just involving the staff, or have we reached out to Legacy Oaks yet?
Legacy Oaks is right now reviewing the actual agreement, and it's consistent with the direction we received from council.
Okay.
So it's, their attorney and their team are frankly very slow responders. It doesn't change what's due on that from underlying debt that's due, or the underlying penalties and interest have accrued. And in fact, their slow response adds to those costs, but they're moving along.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, what we're going to do now is we have a short executive session. Independent City Council will now be an executive session for the purpose of consulting the city's labor negotiator. Executive session is held pursuant to ORS 1926602G, which allows the council to meet in executive session. Designated staff only shall be allowed to attend the executive session. At this time, the council will meet in executive session. No decisions will be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we'll return to open session right here at the council chambers. So I'm going to excuse staff